thoughts rolling here, I would like to take a moment to think about writing as a practice, right? And it being really personal. So one of the questions I'd like to ask you is ultimately, what does your writing look like for you? There's a workbook, or you can go ahead and respond in the chat. I'll give you a few moments to think about that. What does your writing look like? Think about the time you last wrote a report, a journal article, essay, or other academic document. How did you get from nothing to the final draft? Or as a writer, when do you feel or do your best? Are you a night owl? Do you like to wake up early in the morning? What do you do to help yourself write something that you're really proud of? And last but not least, what about your process? Would you like to keep, change, or remove? I'll give you a few moments for that. Hopefully we get a little bit more participants coming in. Okay. Mm, mhm. So take some more time to reflect on the last time you wrote something, or what process you'd like to keep, change, or modify. Okay, let's move on. Because writing requires more than just writing words on a page. There was a study done by a woman by the name of Helen Sword. In publication was in 2017, and she gathered all of the information that she knows about the habits of productive writers and what basically consists of being a productive writer. And four of those pieces that came out was her base habits, or behavioral, artisanal, social, or emotional. So the focus was on behavioral, how you act towards the writing process. Are you persistent? Are you determined? The second is how you create that writing, right? What is it? How much skill that you have? How inept are, or how engaged are you with the process of learning new skills or strategies, being patient, practicing, attention to detail. The social habits, how you collaborate. Do you collaborate? Is a good question, I think, as well. That social component. Do you talk about your writing? Do you talk about your writing with peers, with your TA, with your prof? What does that look like? And last but not least is the emotional component, right? How do you feel about the writing when you think about it, or when you're acting within that process, right? Is it positive? Is it joy? Is it satisfaction? Do you enjoy taking risks in your writing? Or is it something of the opposite? Okay. Next, there's a great tool. They're called base habits, to kind of self-diagnose as to what type of writer you are, whether you are strong in the artisanal area, so you have good skills, but perhaps you are lacking a little bit in the social component. You don't talk enough about the writing. It's more of an isolation thing for you. Instead of writing with peers, talking about peers and doing that back and forth, that peer review, where you're not only becoming you're not advancing the social component of your habits, but you're also improving the artisanal component of it. Now, you notice here that Emma's base, it's a colleague of mine, she is an axe head. So she feels that she's high in artisanal habits and strength, but perhaps low in the social component. So she'll use a little bit of the skills that we're going to talk about in the social component of the habits. Behavioral habits. This is a question. What are some of the good and bad behavioral habits? I know with myself, for the good habits that I implement is scheduling time to write, having a sacred time that does not get disturbed, does not get interrupted, and it's consistent. It's a consistent pattern or a time block that I have within my calendar. Writing in a location that is focused, as well as bringing the right tools. So making sure that I have a charged laptop and a notebook, pad and paper, sticky notes if I want to do kind of mind mapping or anything of this sort. Things that are not necessarily are strong is the fact that you're relying on binge writing at the last minute, procrastination. So basically waiting till 11:59 when your deadline is at midnight, not leaving enough time to revise or working in your bed. I know I was guilty of that in my undergrad, but I have since learned that to be productive is to be in a space that allows you to focus and not be distracted. Another example would be developing a regular writing habit, right? Write in small bursts, record your process, reward yourself, set goals. At the end of these goals that you have for each of the writing sessions, record that progress, and then give yourself a small reward, whether it is, phoning a friend or a loved one, or taking a look at a show, or, scrolling through social media, or just going outside for some fresh air or having a bite to eat or coffee. So about this particular graph, I want you to take a look at it and kind of take a look at, there's three different types of groups. This was a study done in the 90s, and the author, Broke, focuses on three particular groups. Abstinence groups that were forbidden from any kind of non-emergency writing or binge writing. Spontaneous group, only wrote when they felt like it. And then the contingency management group, which was scheduled daily writing sessions, but forbidden to write outside of these sessions. And ultimately, the third group, the number of pages, went down, or sorry, went up, and days between creative writings decreased. The advice here varies from academic to academic, but some recommend a minimum number of pages each day, while others recommend a minimum amount of time. However, the consensus is whatever you decide to work on, as long as it's consistent, stay consistent, stick to it. Customize your schedule, but make sure you have that schedule within a certain allotment every single time in your schedule. Also, additional strategies that are manageable is breaking large tasks into smaller manageable ones. So you can use things like Trello, you can use Passion Planner, which is, pen to paper kind of format. And also to make sure that you create these sub goals so you can monitor your progress and identify all the steps along the way so you can reflect back and see what works and what didn't. A technique that we often suggest to all of our undergraduate students and graduate students is the Pomodoro technique, which basically breaks those little sections, or they're called POMs. They're 25 minutes of uninterrupted work time. And after the 25 minutes is completed, you take a 5-minute break, and then you repeat that at least 4 times, where you have a longer break of 15 to 30 minutes, where you can do a little bit more activity. Another strategy would be actually using the tools at your disposal. There are, tech tools that you can use, like to monitor self-control, to kind of quit cold turkey the social media component and be more focused, where you can activate the palms on your digital device or on your laptop. Moving on to the artisanal habits. So this is looking at where you can improve, what you're doing well and what you need to strive in terms of perhaps technique, style, structure, things of this. And you always want to seek out information to help you learn more about writing, especially in different genres, purposes, and audiences. So it can be difficult to start writing if you don't know what you're supposed to write. Different disciplines, different genres, and different publications all have different expectations for what the final document is supposed to look like. Give yourself permission to do some research and learning before you get started on a project. In fact, doing this will actually help you identify some SMART goals for your planning. And developing these habits by learning about different academic genres is really going to polish your language skills. Now, I'm coming from the University of Waterloo, from the Writing and Communication Center, so I'm wondering how many of your schools have a writing center or peer tutors. Seek them out. They're a great resource. If not, then by all means, always talk to your TA and professors before any kind of due date at any part of the writing process stage. They're there to help. Other resources that were developed in Unity through the University of Guelph, Waterloo, as well as Laurier were modules that you can access at your fingertips. They're self-administered, and you can take as much time as you need or as little time as you need in order to sift through them. There's a lot of great resources on the different genre that are posted on the site. Social habits. This is talking to people, friends, peers, mentors, advisors, family about your writing as you write it. Share some of the challenges that you have, successes, tips, and feedback with each other, right? This is kind of not only a bridging stone between social, but artisanal as well. Because the more you talk to individuals, the more they're going to be able to see what works perhaps for other individuals and also improve their own writing. So all writers need good social habits to get that support and feedback from others. Some good kind of strategies to think about is we've talked about talking to friends, students, TAs, listen to others' questions and their feedback. This is really important because you get a sense of their perspective about how they reacted to the material that you've written. Some of the not so nice things about that is, judging yourself against other people's skills and not acknowledging your own, or refusing to talk to other people for fear of competition or shame or judgment, and judging other people's strategy as well would be a deterrent. But in this case, you really want to think about writing as social instead of in isolation. So we talk a lot about peer review and bridging that gap between social and artisanal habits, and kind of having a dialogue about the reactions of the reader and what worked, what doesn't, what kind of things were difficult for that individual to understand and why, and sharing ideas. The value of an outside reader is ultimately clarity, coherence, and am I saying what I think I'm saying? A good kind of a strategy to think about or principle to follow is the praise, question, polish model, where your focus is on praise. So talk about what's really working, what you like. So your writer continues to do that. Question things that you found confusing. So perhaps, you know, you can identify areas where their structure was maybe not quite clear, or you didn't understand how the argument connected to the overall thesis, things of this nature, and then polish, make actual concrete suggestions, right? And we'll talk about what that looks like a little bit later. So as we've mentioned, you can always book an appointment in advance with a tutor, a writing advisor, but you can also just drop in. I know with our writing center, we have peer tutors as well. You can schedule an appointment with one of our advisors, and it's a great way to engage in social habits and getting familiar and comfortable talking about your writing, which is, I understand, very personal. Now, last but not least, we want to talk about the emotional habits. This is finding ways to really enjoy and feel good about yourself as a writer and your progress and your ups and your downs, whether by celebrating successes, rewarding your hard work, or reminding yourself that you're learning a new skill, right? That idea of a lifelong learner. So good emotional habits emphasize pleasure, challenge, and growth within the writing, right? This is quoted from Sword, Helen Sword's of the four base habits for effective writers. She talks a lot about things like learning from your previous writing projects and applying those to your future ones, acknowledging that some days are just going to be difficult. Other contexts can be involved or other variables involved, and that's okay. reflecting all those challenges, but also reflecting all the successes and what circumstances were around those particular successes. Thinking about writing as a challenge, as a project, and finding something you really enjoy or interested in and rewarding yourself, right? That is reasonable. So whether it is, a quick coffee, a break with a friend, an article you wanted to read, or a nap you wanted to take. I remember being an undergrad, always being tired, so I get it. Um, and to combating some of those perhaps bad components of emotional habits when it comes to writing, like negative self-talk, right? Try to turn that negativity into positivity, focusing on what makes you lost and what that looks like, and some strategies to think about to be able to combat those. Now, I understand students can face common emotional roadblocks while writing. I was guilty of it as well in my grad and in my graduate studies as well. So they're very common, and it's okay. That idea of being a perfectionist, that basically this isn't right, and that you want to take the time, or constantly trying to make it work. And sometimes you have to say to yourself, I don't, I think this is good enough. This is what I want to achieve, and leave it at that. You've gone through the particular steps that you need to make it the best of your ability, and submitting it to the powers that be. Avoiding coping or procrastination, as is the theme of this particular awareness conference. So procrastinating, trying to think about doing everything else except actually sitting down to write. And a good strategy kind of to prevent this from happening is using some of the palms as well, or writing things down, knowing that it's going to be messy, it's going to be ugly, and it's not going to be your final draft. Another kind of emotional roadblock is the isolation component, right? Writing in isolation. That's why Sword talks a lot about that social component of effective writers, right? Strong writers don't necessarily write in isolation. They talk about their writing, about their struggles, and get feedback from friends and peers and colleagues, and so forth, in order to be able to overcome some of those roadblocks and improve their artisanal habits. And last but not least, imposter syndrome. It's very common in graduate studies, but I wanted to throw it out there as well, because it is something that undergraduate students also struggle. Kind of the idea of, I'm a fraud, I don't deserve this. This is ultimately, someone's going to find out that I'm not good enough, or my writing isn't good enough to be submitted or to go through. So a lot of these kind of roadblocks can prevent you from having that positive emotional connection to the writing. So let's talk about things that we can do to help combat some of these roadblocks. So some of you might relate to these common negative thoughts about writing, like I can't write if I'm not feeling creative. If I ask for help, I'm admitting that I'm not good enough. And what we try to encourage here at the Writing Center is, when we experience these unpleasant thoughts or emotions, we often feel compelled to want to avoid these uncomfortable experiences. We want to push these feelings aside by doing something other than the task, hence procrastination. These coming up are going to be mantras or scripts that you can try repeating to yourself when you're faced with these negative thoughts. And I'm going to give you some examples. Changing that self-talk. If I do some free writing for about 5 minutes, maybe I'll feel more inspired. Good writers ask other writers for help all the time. And yes, we do that. Even at the Writing Center, we encourage our colleagues and our students, our peers, everyone, to talk about their struggles, their successes, what they've overcome and how they've overcome it, to really kind of help pinpoint on techniques and strategies that we can implement in the center, as well as give feedback to students. Now, scheduling time to write is great. So is scheduling time for the things that refresh your mind, right, and your soul. Make a list of these things that bring you joy, whether it's walks, hikes, treats with a friend, baking. I'm a huge baker, so I bake a lot of sourdough. bread constantly for our family as well as friends, baking cookies, listening to your favorite music, and make sure you make time to do this. These are the types of rewards that refresh you and give yourself care as a whole human, not just a person that's producing writing, right? Now, the last activity here is a reflection on your current writing habits. Based on everything that we've discussed today, answer the following questions. There's 3 questions I'd like you to really reflect on and think about what works. Um, Jot down some ideas, or even just take a moment to close your eyes and think about what habits do you feel confident in that you've been doing, maybe in one of those categories, whether it was behavioral, artisanal, social, or emotional. What habits do you want to improve on? Right? Where do you see that you can use more improvement? Is it your artisanal skills, or your social skills, where you can go to a writing center, schedule an appointment or a debrief with an instructor or TA to help you with some of those challenges that you had in that writing assignment? And what is one thing you can do to improve or practice that particular habit? Now, at our Writing and Communication Center, we love to know how we did for this particular workshop. There's a QR code on the top right corner to give us feedback. What worked, what didn't, and there's also resources that are available to you. They're all on our website too. There's in-person and online appointments, self-registering for workshops that we have provided on our website. Lots of online writing and communication resources. If we have any questions, okay, no questions, which is absolutely okay. So thank you very much for your time and your patience. And I hope this was, I know, short and sweet, but I hope it was valuable and you took away some strategies to think about for next time. All right. Thank you very much. Now I will stay here. I just have a few more minutes. So if people pop in, I'll be more than happy to take any questions. Mm. Bye bye.